Brutal murder of a Philadelphia pediatrician, Jason Smith. An exterminator seen on surveillance tape heading to the doctor's home. He's confessed to the crime now, and ABC's Alex Marquardt is covering the case from Philadelphia. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, George. Jason Smith was arraigned last night and ordered held without bail. This is a man with no criminal background, no connection to the doctor, but reportedly a long history of anger problems. This surveillance photo is what led investigators to 36-year-old Jason Smith as he walked through the neighborhood where Dr. Melissa Ketunuti lived. ABC News is learning more about Smith, the exterminator who police say showed up at the home of Ketunuti on Monday afternoon to handle her rodent problem.
They got into some type of argument. It went terribly wrong. At that point, he struck her while she was in the basement, knocked her down, strangled her to death, and then ultimately set her body on fire.
After hours of police questioning on Wednesday night, Smith admitted to the brutal murder. Sources telling ABC affiliate WPVI that Smith told the police that Ketunuti had belittled him. He snapped and apparently tried to hide any evidence by setting the 35-year-old on fire with paper he lit in the kitchen.
At some point it was solemn, but at other points it was sort of like he was in a fog.
Smith is now charged with murder, arson, abuse of a corpse, and risking a catastrophe. Ori Faybush owns a coffee shop near Ketunuti's street. He and police poured over hours of surveillance video. They saw Ketunuti walking home from doing errands, and just steps behind her, Smith.
45 minutes later, we see the same guy walking past. He looks a little bit more disheveled, and he's got gloves on.
Police say that after the murder, Smith circled Ketunuti's block twice before heading off to another job. A family friend from many years ago who asked for anonymity tells ABC News that he was a problem child growing up. He had behavior and anger issues. He also liked to set things on fire.
People like Mr. Smith basically walk around with a huge chip on their shoulder, and they feel so inadequate and so insecure that any perceived belittlement of them will set them off.
And just a short while ago, we received a statement from the Ketunuti family reading, "Melissa was a source of joy to everyone in her life. Her passing has left an enormous gap in our lives, and the family requests privacy to mourn during this difficult time." As for Jason Smith, we next expect to see him in court in 3 weeks. George?
Okay, Alex, thanks. Let's get more on this now from our GMA legal analyst, Dan Abrams. So you've got a confession, Dan. You've got these tapes. How does he begin to mount a defense?
Well, first of all, this is everyone's worst nightmare, right? The story of inviting someone into your home to fix something, repair something, and then something like this happens. This is a tough defense. When you have the surveillance tapes, you have an alleged confession, the only kind of defense you can think of would be a manslaughter type defense, where he says there was no intent to commit murder, it was just a heat of the moment thing that came up. The problem for him is what happened afterwards. Now, legally, that shouldn't matter, right? The question legally should be, what was his intent? What were his actions when he did that? But it is impossible to ignore what happened afterwards, and that is, of course, setting the body on fire.
And how do judges and juries balance out? On the one hand, this is so brutal. Yeah. On the other hand, no premeditation, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, a judge or jury, and jury in particular, is going to look at all the facts, is going to look at exactly what happened, and I think that this is why it's hard for him, is because when people, in a case like this, where it may not be an issue of did he do it, but why? Those are tough cases for the defendants to win, because most of the time jurors look at what happened, they look at the victim, and they say to themselves, this is simply inexcusable.
We're putting this guy away. Okay, Dan Abrams, thanks very much.